All right, it is 7 PM. If we can call the city council meeting to order, if we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Doing roll call, all members are present other than Jeff Holmgren, who let us know he would not be here tonight. Is there any public comment tonight? If so, you're welcome to come up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Hearing none, we will close the public hearing or public comment. We will next move to adopting the agenda. Are there any changes?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. There are no changes as was published today, but I do want to make note of a couple last-minute additions to our agenda. That is to add a second applicant to be interviewed for the vacant Park and Recreation Board seat, which is business item K2, and then also the addition of L14 on the consent agenda, which is resolution to approve ash tree survey.
All right, and I would like to move item L6 up to the agenda if possible, please.
I would like to have a discussion on L14.
I would have a discussion on L13 as well. Are there any other additions or changes?
Did you look over L4 pretty good? And website?
I did. Seemed fine.
Okay.
I had a few questions regarding L6 as well.
Okay. So we have L6, L13, and L14 all being moved to business items, if that's okay with everybody. Any other additions to that?
Yes, I did have one question on L3 that we can, it'll be a quick one.
All right, we can move L3 forward as well then. Anybody else? Otherwise, I'll hear a motion to approve with the changes.
Motion approved with changes.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Peterson, second by Councilmember Heeman, to approve the agenda with moving up L3, L6, L13, and L14. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. The agenda is approved with the addendums. Next, we have a few proclamations to read. So I'll start out with the Child Care Provider Appreciation Day, which is May 9th. Whereas children are among Isani's most precious treasures, representing our greatest hopes for the future as the next leaders of our community, state, and nation, and whereas no occupation is more important than child rearing, and whereas family child care providers are stepping up to ensure children are safe and parents and guardians are able to work, and whereas the licensed family child care providers in Isani and across the state of Minnesota are professionals who create nurturing, safe, healthy learning environments, understand and the developmental stages of children, and support them as they learn to grow. Now, therefore, I, Luke Merrill, interim mayor of the city of Isani, do hereby proclaim May 9th, 2025 as Child Care Provider Appreciation Day and encourage all citizens to honor the quality child care that has been provided to the children of Isani. Next, we also have National Police Week proclamation. Whereas in 1962, President Kennedy proclaimed May 15th as National Police Officers Day, and the calendar week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week. Established by a joint resolution of Congress in 1962, National Police Week pays special recognition to those law enforcement officers who have lost their lives in the line of duty for the safety and protection of others. And whereas public safety officers of the Isani Police Department stand watch over our citizens, selflessly risking their lives to protect individuals, families, neighborhoods, and property against crimes. And whereas Thursday, May 15th, 2025, is observed nationally as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community or have become disabled in the performance of duty. And whereas the Isani Police Department, past and present, who by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered dedicated service to the community, and now, therefore, I, Luke Merrill, interim mayor of the city of Isani, do hereby proclaim May 11th through May 17th, 2025 as National Police Week within the city of Isani and recognize our great law enforcement professionals. Thank you, Travis and crew, for everything you do for our city. And we have another long one here. So this is National Public Works Week proclamation for May 18th through May 24th. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to public health, high quality of life, and well-being of people of the city of Isani. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals or engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector. We are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the city of Isani to gain knowledge of and maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2025 marks the 65th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Work Association, now therefore I, Luke Merrill, interim mayor of the city of Isani, do hereby designate the week of May 18th through the 24th, 2025 as National Public Works Week. I urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and advancing quality of life for all. All right, next we will move on to the City Council meeting minutes. Are there any questions on April 10th, City Council Canvas Board, April 15th, Committee of a Whole, or April 15th, council meetings?
Nope. Motion to approve?
Yes, for any question.
Do you have any questions? No? Okay. I entertain a motion.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Councilmember Heeman, second by Councilmember Lundin. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. I would like to thank our Jaden Strand for also being very elaborative on those meeting minutes. That's a lot of work to do that, and that's something that I think goes unnoticed. So great job, Jaden. Next, we have announcements. Committee of a Whole meeting Tuesday, May 20th, 2025 at 5 p.m. Planning Commission meeting Tuesday, May 20th, 2025 at 6 p.m. City Council meeting Tuesday, May 20th, 2025 at 7 p.m. City offices will be closed Monday, May 26, 2025, in observance of Memorial Day, and the Park and Rec Board will be meeting Tuesday, May 27th, 2025 at 6 p.m. Next are the council committee reports. Are there any tonight?
I'll make mine short. Fire District approved to buy a new gas truck, or grass truck. The Rodeo Association contributed $50,000, and then the Fire District contributed $25,000 towards purchase of a new vehicle. I'm in the process too of putting together a packet for anybody who takes over the Fire District position in the future so that they have all the information available to them. I made some extensive requests for some information, and once I get that all together, I'll put it on file, I'll give it to Josie, so that the next person who sits on that board will be brought up to speed real fast. And my next committee report's gonna be very detailed. There's a lot going on with the Fire District right now. I'll find out more in the near future. I wish that the chief would give administrator updates every 2 weeks, because we get no information from the time that we get the agenda to the following agenda, and a lot of things have happened with the Fire District in the last few weeks, so it'd be nice to get official, something more official from the chief every 2 weeks. What's going on with the district, what, with employees or changes they've made. I think that'd be reasonable, so I'll talk to him about that here in the future. That's about it.
Community education got rescheduled due to the tornado siren going off, but we did have the Chamber of Commerce meeting, which was the state of the county. County talked about the roundabout project and kind of how the commissioner system is structured. Those are the only real two things that were pertinent to the city, but talking about the new road building that they're gonna be doing over a long-term project for their road maintenance department and some of their highlights of their parks department and HHS stuff.
Last month's school board meeting was relatively uneventful. There wasn't a whole lot to share there. But I did just want to remind folks that if you have any questions related to the schools, reach out to the school board members or or leadership at the schools. They'd be happy to provide you answers, and I can provide contact information for any of those. The city doesn't have any jurisdiction over any of the schools, but I'm happy to help any way I can with that. The chamber also had a ribbon cutting for Bears Excavating, who recently moved their family and their businesses here from a metro suburb. They wanted to get out of the environment down there, and I'm very happy to have them here. Council had worked with them and approved a conditional use permits so they could have an access driveway to this pole building that was on the south side of town, and they're now utilizing that for access to their business equipment, and I just wanted to welcome them to town. Any other council committee reports? All right, we will move into business item K1, a resolution to consider accepting the 2024 annual financial report and management letter.
Mayor and Council, we do have two wonderful staff here from ABDO who's going to be presenting this evening. And here we have Adam Owens as well as Kelsey Larson.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for having us tonight to go through your 2024 financial statement.
Kelsey, if I could stop you for just a second. I will need you to speak directly into the microphone, or you can grab it and you can talk into it. They can just plug off too.
It's not very good.
We can move.
There.
Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Okay. Well, thanks for having us tonight to go through your 2024 financial statement audit with you tonight. Like Josie said, my name is Kelsey Larson. I'm a manager here at ABDO and the manager of the audit. And then we also have Adam Owens. He is a senior associate with us on the audit as well. We'll be going through your audit results, and then we'll go through each of your funds and then end with some key performance indicators tonight. So as we begin, I do just want to remind you that as auditors, we are engaged to opine on your financial statements on whether or not they are presented fairly and free from material misstatement. We do this through a series of testing, such as sampling some of your invoices. We get confirmations from your bank and the state, and we talk with your employees. Really anything that we deem necessary to form that opinion. And so like years past, we were able to issue an unmodified or clean opinion stating that your financial statements are presented fairly. Along with our regular audit testing, we're also required to do testing on Minnesota legal compliance. Some examples of that testing includes making sure you have sufficient collateral with your banks, you're following contracting and bidding rules, debt procedures, things of that nature. And we had no instances of non-compliance noted there. We do have one audit finding in 2024, and it just states that we help prepare your financial statements. So it'd be very costly for you to train someone to prepare those financial statements and get the correct software in order to prepare them. So a lot of cities your size will just accept that finding. And with that, I'll hand it over to Adam.
Hello, I'm Adam. I'm going to talk about some financial information for the year of 2024 for Isanti. Going to start with this graph right here, the general fund balance compared to budget. That yellow line at the top is the general fund budgeted expenditures for that year. The orange line is general fund balance as a percentage of next year's budgeted expenditures. And then that black line is the minimum fund balance policy of the city, which is fund balance at 30% of next year's budgeted expenditures. And the maximum is set at 70% of next year's expenditures. So you can see over the years, there's some good reserves been building up in the general fund. Then here is a general fund budget to actual statement for 2024. We can see that expenditures are pretty consistent with what they were budgeted at, but revenues did come in around $440,000 over what they were budgeted at. $222,000 of this variance was related to licenses and permit revenue. These were anticipated to drop in 2024, but people kept building, especially with those apartment buildings that popped up. Those permitting revenues just kept coming in. And then there was a $138,000 variance with investment earnings. You know, there was a slump in 2022, but in 23 and then 24, those investments picked back up. So we've seen a lot of cities start to reap a lot of the rewards of that. And then the fund balance did increase by $446,000 during the year, and that is related to those variances that I just noted. Then for general fund revenues and expenditures by type, here are those two graphs there. We have taxes, intergovernmental, transfers in, and other. For that tax revenue over the years, that's just kind of varied with, you know, spikes or drops in the levy. And then with intergovernmental revenues, that did tick up in 2024 due to increased local government aid received in 2024. There was some legislation, I think in 2023, that increased appropriations received by a lot of cities. So that explains that increase there. Transfers in ticked up just a little bit. There's transfers in from the EDA and the liquor store into the general fund, and they were just a little larger than they were in prior years. And then that other category right there, that other category includes licenses and permits, charges for services, fines and forfeitures, and investment earnings. And like I was talking about earlier, that 2022 slump of investment earnings and then coming back with 23 and 24, that explains, excuse me, that explains that tick up in 23 and then consistent in 2024. Then with the expenditures, we have general government, public safety, public works, and then that other category. That other category for expenditures is economic development, parks and rec, and transfers. All three, or the general government, other category, and then public works, they were all pretty consistent for the past 3 years. With public safety, we have seen steady increases year over year related to increases in personnel services in the police department. Here are some special revenue fund balances for 2024 and 23. Not too many significant changes from 23. I will note that the park fund did increase by about $93,000 due to increased park fees from kind of like to go along with those licenses and permits. Those increases in revenues there goes along with the park fees that were earned in that fund. Then we have the two major capital project funds for 23 and 24. On this slide, we have the street construction fund that increased by $467,000 during the year. And the main result of, you know, the levy, the assessments, the franchise fees in that fund, the state aid, and the investment earnings just continuing to outpace the costs for the capital projects in that fund during the year. And those projects were primarily the pavement management project and then the Heritage Boulevard project. With that capital replacement fund, that did drop $281,000 during the year, and that is a result of some more significant capital projects happening and purchases during the year, like the Bluebird Park playground equipment purchases, the 2024 Mack plow truck purchase, and then the City Hall roof replacement project. Then here is a graph and schedule of the debt service funds showing principal and interest going out to 2030. Here are cash flows from operations and cash balances for the water fund. So on the top we have orange, that's operating receipts, black is debt payments, and then the yellowish is operating costs. We can see that operating receipts did tick down a little bit in 2024. That was a result of decreased usage. No change in the rates, just less usage, and then operating receipts that brought that down a little bit. If you look at the graph below, though, that is cash balance in the water fund over the past 4 years. That did tick up in 2024 because there were more connections during the year, and those water access fees and those utility trunk fees, that did bring up the cash balance during the year. Also, going along with that, cash did kind of fall the past 3 years from 21 to 22 to 23. That was a result of some other significant capital projects happening in the water fund in those prior years, like the meter replacement, the 2023 utility extension in the prior year. And then in the current year, there just weren't many capital expenditures or projects in the water fund, so that kind of helped keep that that cash balance going up. In that black line there, I just want to note that is the following year's debt service plus 6 months of operating costs. That's like the minimum balance that you want to have for your cash. Similar story with the sewer fund operating receipts, ticked down slightly, but cash did increase because not many or no significant capital projects during the year, but there were more connections. So those sewer access charges and those utility trunk charges did help bring that cash balance up this year. Stormwater fund, we can see operating receipts been dropping steadily for the past few years. This is due to drops in the base stormwater rate that's been charged. But if you look at the graph down below, you can see that cash has been increasing in the fund due to the fact that there's just not many costs required to be in that fund to maintain operations. So that's kind of helped it or allowed it to build up some cash despite the drop in the base rate over year.
So next, we're going to look at your liquor store fund. So this first chart's going to have 22 to 24 income statement there compared to the 2023 Office of State Auditor averages, so all the averages of the state. Some key metrics there is going to be your operating income. You ended 2024 at 9.9%, which is a decrease from 22 and 23. This is, however, over the 2023 average. The main reasoning for that decrease in that operating income is an increase in your operating expenses. That is mainly due to increases in personnel expenses. So I think it's no surprise that operating or personnel expenses have been on the increase these past 3 years there. And then the other thing is that your net position increased by 1%. This is lower than the average, but you do have your budgeted transfer to the general fund as you help fund some activity in the general fund with your liquor store fund. And that first chart up here is going to show that same information. We have your sales and then what makes up those sales. So we have most of those sales are going to your cost of goods sold, and then that operating income sitting right around 10% for the last 3 years. And then lastly, we have your cash balance in the liquor store fund, which stayed pretty consistent from 23 to 24. Next, we have your cash and investment balances for the entire city, so ending the year just at about 16 million. The majority of that increase is going to be your enterprise funds that Adam had mentioned. Our last couple of slides here are going to be key performance indicators where we compare your trends to the state data. So we have cities in Isanti County and cities in Class 4. The state has not released 2023 data yet, so we do not have that to compare to, but we can kind of see your trend here. So the one on the left is going to be your tax rate, which has been trending downwards. I know the city has been looking at keeping taxes low for the community. That has been an objective of yours, so I think that shouldn't be any surprise there that you're trending downwards and more towards the bottom of your peers. And then we have taxes per capita. That has been more consistent as you have increases and decreases to population, ending the year with a slight downward in 2024. Next, we have some debt key performance indicators. So the one on the left is debt expenditures per capita. You don't have a ton of debt outstanding. The last time you issued debt was in 2021, where we see that little bit of a spike there. However, from then on, you've just been paying down that debt, and those expenditures are on the decrease. We also have debt expenditures as a percent of total expenditures. Once again, you're just buying down that debt, and you've been able to keep that lower than your peers. Then we also have expenditures. So the left is going to be your current expenditures, which is everything but debt and capital. You've been able to keep that very consistent these last 3 years, which is why you've been able to keep that levy low. I think a lot of cities in the state and around the country have seen pretty heavy increases with inflation. So the fact that you're able to keep that consistent is a good sign. And then that right is capital expenditures per capita. Really hard to compare to your peers here just because everyone's going to have capital projects at different times. So as you can see In 20 and 21, you guys were a little bit higher, but then from then on, you've been a little bit on the lower side. And that is all we have for you guys. I will open it up for questions.
Any questions? Well, it sure is nice to get some financial rundown. We haven't had that the last few months, so it's good to see those numbers, and it's a little bit of a relief to see the debt service levy especially. That's been a big one for us. You know, debt is the killer of families and cities across the country, so the fact that we can see the end of the tunnel with that is a really good sign for our community. Any other questions?
You did a great job.
All right, great, thank you. I really appreciate it, and I'm happy that there was no significant findings as per the usual, so
Thank you, guys.
thank you. All right, we will move on to item K2, interview applicants Rebecca Waller and Wendy Otten for the vacant Parks and Recreation Board seat. Rebecca, if you could come up, I have a few questions for you. If you could just state your name and address for the record, and then we'll get right into the questions.
Mayor, if we could just hold on one moment. I believe we do have a resolution to accept the audit.
Oh.
Financial summary report as well.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lundin, second by Councilmember Peterson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. I didn't see that in here. All right, so now we'll start. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Rebecca Waller, 815 Park Brook Road Northwest.
Thank you. So tell us about yourself and why the council should consider you for the Parks and Recreation Board seat.
I have been living in Isanti for nearly 8 years, and you should consider me because I am an active member of the community. I volunteer in the schools, all the schools that we have. I participate in the local events, and I attend our local meetings.
Great. Do you have experience being a Parks and Recreation Board member or a similar experience that would help you in this role?
No, I do not have board experience specifically. However, in my many years of volunteer service, I have been considered a Girl Friday, and I show up and give 100%.
What do you feel is the most important role and the purpose of the Parks and Recreation Board in our community?
To provide accessible, welcoming spaces for neighbors to gather and participate in community enrichment activities.
Okay. What do you believe are the top priorities for the city's current park system?
Sustained maintenance, cost-effective opportunities to grow and improve our existing parks and create opportunities for community events.
Do you have experience in long-range planning? Please explain if so.
No, I do not have any current long-range planning experience.
Okay. The Parks and Recreation Board reviews and makes recommendations on the overall planning, management, and policies of our park system to the City Council. How do you plan to tie that into the general goals of the City Council?
I feel the role of the Parks and Recreation Board is that of liaison between the community and the City Council regarding the park system. The Park Board's job is to advocate for the community's wants and needs while working as a team with the City Council towards an end goal.
Okay. If you could bring a new or enhanced feature, event, or service to our park system, what would that be?
I feel like a community rock garden would be a great addition as a low-cost, low-maintenance way to increase park traffic of all ages. People would want to return to the rock gardens to see new works of art and inspiration. It would also add a pop of color to the parks and create opportunities for future community participation and events.
The Parks and Recreation Board typically meets the fourth Tuesday of the month at 6 p.m. Does this fit in with your other time commitments?
Yes.
Is there anything else you would like to add to assist us in considering you as a park board candidate?
I am a very service-minded individual. I am passionate about forming connections, helping the community, and bringing people together.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the rest of the board?
No?
I do have a couple of questions, if that's all right. Yep. So I'll have to ask both applicants the same questions. How do you feel about splash pad, amphitheater, and other amenities in the city? How do you feel the city's focus on that should be?
Well, the amphitheater, I think, is a great addition. I do think we need to advertise that in maybe a more creative way to bring in more events or business. The splash pad, I'm a little torn on with all of our new development and the city's water usage, so I'm more hesitant on the splash pad.
Okay. And then, do you think the city of Isani should have more parks, less parks, or happy where we are?
I think we have a great amount of parks that we could probably advertise and utilize in like better, more creative ways if we needed to. I don't necessarily think that we need more parks, maybe like mini parks, benches or installments for people to just sit and enjoy where we don't have large spaces, but we have enough for a spot near a sidewalk to take a break or have a moment. That would be nice.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, great, thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you to the council for interviewing me. Thank you.
All right, Wendy Otten, you're welcome to come on up and state your name and address for the record, and I will ask you the same questions. Thank you for coming in.
Hello, I'm Wendy Otten. My address is 221 East Broadway Street, and I have lived there for about 20 years.
Great. So first question, tell us about yourself and why the council should consider you for the Parks and Recreation Board seat.
As I said, I've lived at my current home for 20 years. I have always lived in Isani County for most of my life, or the town of Isani. I raised my children here. My grandchildren are being raised here, and I want to be more involved in the community now that I have more time.
Okay. Do you have experience being a Parks and Recreation Board member or similar experience that would help you in this role?
I do not have experience of being a board member. However, I have experience of being a manager of a shop that built custom automated equipment, large lines of equipment. I coordinated it, purchased items for it, arranged different shipping and all kinds of, from start to finish.
Okay. What do you feel is the most important role and the purpose of the Parks and Recreation Board in our community?
To provide opportunities for enrichment and a safe environment for our community.
Okay. What do you believe are the top priorities for the city's current park system?
To improve and maintain the existing amenities, to explore new amenities and community activities.
Okay. Do you have experience in long-range planning? If so, please explain.
My only experience would be my employment of planning long projects.
Okay. The Parks and Recreation Board reviews and makes recommendations on the overall planning, management, and policies of our park system to the City Council. How do you plan to tie that into overall goals of the City Council?
When planning and developing parks, it's essential to consider the long-term goals of the City Council, the staff, and the residents, following all the overall goals of our City Council, both budget and considering what our community wants.
Okay. If you could bring a new or enhanced feature, event, or service to our park system, what would that be?
I was kind of thinking maybe like a food truck weekend or holding an event for young entrepreneurs to display or sell their products.
Okay. The Parks and Recreation Board typically meets the fourth Tuesday of the month at 6 p.m. Does this fit in with your other time commitments?
Yes, it does.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to assist us in considering you as a park board candidate?
I realize this is my first time being really involved in the city, and I'm eager to jump into this opportunity. I look forward to working on continued improvements within our park system.
Okay. And then I have my additional questions. How do you feel about amenities like the splash pad, amphitheater, and other larger amenities?
I think the amphitheater is good. I'd like to see more events go there for the family. Splash pad, I know that's a huge conversation. I kind of think for the size, it wasn't going to work out. I would obviously like to see more things for our younger generation.
Okay. And then, are you happy with, do you want more parks, less parks, or are you happy where the city is at as far as parks?
I'm happy with where the city's at with their parks. I think there's always room for improvement and other ideas.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Now we'll have some discussion. Do you guys have any discussion or motions or any input that you'd like to add?
I think they're both very qualified.
I guess I'll add something. I've known Wendy my whole life, pretty much, and I think she fits well with what we embody. But also Rebecca is a great candidate as well. So I would be happy with either as well. So I don't really have a whole lot to say on it, I guess.
I know I don't want to be biased either. I've known Wendy for, I was surprised to see she stepped up. I've known her for quite a long time myself, so I do know her. They both interviewed very well. We gotta make a verbal vote on this?
Can you clarify, Josie, how we have to do that on this one?
Yeah, so all of our boards and appointed commissions are done by vote of the council. So it would be a recommendation motion, and then if a second comes, and then you'd vote on that, and then that will amend the resolution as well.
Well, you're interim mayor, you can make a motion for one of them.
No, I'm not making a motion on this one.
I'm gonna motion for Rebecca. I mean, they both did a great job. I just think it's, a little younger blood coming in, and that's just how I feel. You gotta choose one or the other, and I think they did both a great job. And so, we could sit up here all night going back and forth, don't wanna do it, so.
There is a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Hearing none, motion passes. Any other discussion or additions?
Motion to appoint Wendy Otten.
Just
Motion
for
on the.
clarification, the motion failed, correct?
Correct.
Right.
I hear a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Motion by Councilmember Peterson, second by Councilmember Heeman. All in favor of appointing Wendy Otten to the Park Board, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-1. Thank you, Wendy and Rebecca. I really appreciate you guys coming in. I think you would both be great assets. And if there's any other open seats anytime in the near future, I would recommend that you apply for those. Next, we will go on to K3, Luminare Sani, 2025 discussion.
Trying to take notes too, so. Okay, so staff did review the what was presented by Isani Together for the Illuminate Isani 2025, and just had a few comments regarding a couple of the things we did submit it to our city attorney just to see what we could do and what would be allowed. And so it is our first recommendation that we would recommend that Isani Together would get a fiscal host. It's kind of, unless it stays a city-run event, it's hard for us to pass through dollars at this point. So our suggestion would be to get, well, they're not a nonprofit, to get the VFW or someone of that sort to be that fiscal host for the first year, and that would be a better a way for them to do it without becoming the 501c3, since that is such a lengthy process. And so that's one of our recommendations. Some of the other recommendations are just regarding our time. Staff time is, especially now, we've had a lot of things happening here at City Hall and throughout the city, and so we have very limited public works time and just in general City Hall time, and so just keeping that into consideration as we're moving these discussions forward. Even if we were holding it, we'd have a whole new discussion probably now regarding what that looked like. And so I know they want to have a lot of volunteers, which is really amazing, and we hope that is how it goes too, in those volunteer days. And I think it's more adequate for us to think about like a one day where we could have like Jessica's time or the Parks and Rec coordinator's time be dedicated to those volunteer days to get them kicked off instead of 6 days is a lot, especially on nights and weekends. It's just not feasible with all of the other stuff that we have going on within the city to add that additional time. And so we want to be amenable to them, but just telling you what staff really did discuss. And we appreciate the proposal, and we really hope that we can find a way to make it work together, but those are just our main topics for, discussion.
Under what legal definition would the proposal be? I mean, if we accept a proposal, is it negotiable 3 months down the road, 6 months, a year? Otherwise, there's some language I'd like to see changed right away. Like, they were looking for a 3-year proposal, and I'd like to just do 1 year to see how this first year goes. I mean, that's only fair, make sure everything is working on both ends before, and then look at it again maybe in February and fine tune it. I'm sure you guys are gonna do a great job, but it's a brand new thing, and I'd hate to be stuck to something that may not work or holes can't get filled in.
I think this is our time to negotiate now, so we don't have the contract written at this point, and so this is what we need to happen, is to weigh in and come to the table right now and get what those negotiating points are. So I think if that's what you not want to negotiate with them, they will come back and negotiate with us, and so now is the time.
So all those things, just to reiterate what Ms. Hillstein said, all those items will need to be negotiated, but then put into an agreement or contract form, especially if the city is giving city time to, excuse me, this group, as we don't do it with other groups, and how that all is laid out as an approach of, they're using city assets, things like that, and what, it has to be very identified as what those parameters are, because it'd be specific to that group and why it's not applied to all groups within the city.
So we should take the time tonight to go through this line item by line item?
Yes.
I did go through, and I have probably about a dozen things highlighted that I would like to, just, some wording changes and some small changes that I think would be beneficial to the city. If you guys would like to follow along, and then we can add more, or I guess I can just kind of start it off. So if you are on page 1, the third bullet point, lights on 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. during event days, I would like to see if we can have maybe some of the larger displays on during non-event days as well, just to kind of promote the event on non-event nights, because then you drive through the community, you see the lights, and I think that's something that, I'm sure you guys are okay with that, and so I think that's something that we could work on, since we have to do timers and whatnot either way. And then on page 2, the last bullet point under funding requests for city, it states, if a new group wishes to take over Illuminate Isanti from the disbanding Isanti Together, the new organization group will receive the leftover funds to continue Illuminate Isanti. I think that the city leadership should have a say if the new organization takes over or not, and what happens with that. Yes, Kim, you're welcome to come forward. Yeah, I think it's fair for you guys to come forward. No problem.
Kim Martin, 105 Fifth Avenue Southwest. Question. I'm a little confused because I thought we were a committee of residents that were willing to coordinate this event on behalf of the city,
Right.
not instead of. And what I'm hearing is you're suggesting that it's instead of. And that's not how I understood it anyway. Is that not the case?
Did we imply that?
I think that I would just say that, to me, that was implied because of the potential status of becoming a 501c3. That disjoints it from a city event.
Okay, and we were only doing that just to keep the money separate, because we didn't think that after the first year, having the city coordinate the money, just because we're new, just to take the money out of it, I guess, was the reason we were gonna do that. I mean, if you guys want to keep managing the money, that's fine too.
No, my concern was only if your guys' group fails and, or disbands, and then another group starts, they shouldn't automatically just get the money without the city having a decision if that group is fitting. I think you guys are very fitting for the job, but in the future, that might not be the case. And I think at the end of the day, the city is taking on a fairly large tax burden still on this. I'm just related it to
Well,
if,
see, but that's where I guess I'm not understanding where the tax burden comes in for the city, because really all the city is doing, other than providing the land to have it, and is the public works part of it, which they're paid anyway, I guess. It's not like we're asking you to pay them extra.
but they could be doing other things. So when you have a business or a city, you have to consider, if you have 200 hours of public works hours just going into this, or 300 or 400, that's still time that they have to be paid that they're taking away from other
I get
things.
it, but what you were telling us is you were paying 700 hours.
That's what it was last year,
Correct,
right?
okay. And have cut that considerably down.
Correct.
So I get it, but I mean, it's not like it's that big of a burden on the city like it was, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
I just see it as a liability if, I think, like I
The only
said,
thing is, if we're asking people to donate money for this event.
Right.
Sure.
In particular, this event, to start out with as our group.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they donate money to this group as Illuminate a Sani, if for whatever reason this group disbands, I guess I would say if you want the city to decide where that money goes after that, how do we let those people know that the money they gave to Illuminate a Sani may not go there, I guess would be my question.
from a devil's advocate perspective, I brought it up because I think, like I said, you guys are great, but what if there's something bad happens in your guys' group, and all of a sudden you decide to disband and a new group is made that doesn't even take this money for Illuminate a Sani, takes the money and runs with it?
Oh,
That's-
no, we would
that's-
say they would get the money, correct me if I'm wrong, to use for Illuminate Isani. That's what it was given for. It would just be a different group taking over that event. It's not like they could take that money and go bowling.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Was there any question on that one from y'all, on that last bullet point? I just saw it as maybe it's a potential for, if something bad were to happen, you always think the worst case, right?
Absolutely.
I think the city should have a
And
say,
maybe it should be worded maybe differently.
right?
Maybe that's what it should be as worded, is if they disband, that money stays in Illuminate Isani and
For the
it can't
next group that
transfer
takes
to
over.
anything else.
Right, yep,
That'd be the fairest way
Correct.
of doing it.
That's-
So then they're getting money donated for it, and the people that are donating it knows it goes to that cause.
Even if it's not us doing it.
That's right.
right.
That
I just
money
wanted
would
to make
stay
sure that was
with
clear in
Illuminate.
That
there.
makes sense.
Okay.
What if the event never occurred again?
Well, and then another thing to bring up is if they did receive donations to the city, right, for Illuminate Isani, because they'd be a volunteer group for the first year, maybe it changes.
Yep.
The city can't give those funds out, whether Illuminate continues, for hypothetically, if the group becomes a 501c3 the following year, the city of Isani would not be able to transfer funds to a separate organization, even a nonprofit one. There would not be able to have that occur. Likewise, if the volunteer group continued on for successful years after, the city could not give the funds to the organization to use to purchase lights or anything like that. We can't have the transfer of city funds. Once it becomes city funds, it's city funds.
Sure, that makes sense. So what you're saying is if we use the city for the funds the first year, we kind of have to spend it all and get a 501c, for example, to make our own funds.
Correct. The city would not be able, even if there was a reserve
Right.
of, let's just say, 20,000, because so many donations came in, the city
Right.
would not be able to transfer that to a different organization.
Correct. But if we gave you money this year, we would just have to spend it this year.
If the city accepted funds and the council wanted the city to spend funds on the event,
Right. So
The
you're
council
saying
can make
any
that.
money I give you, the city can change how it's spent?
The city council is it becomes city funds as soon as the city takes it in.
Unless you earmark it for a specific
And
cause.
council can, yes.
Yes, you would have to earmark it as yourself.
For
that-
Illuminate Isani.
Yes,
And the council would have to do that.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, just hypothetically, if I walked in here and said, I'm giving the city of Isani $100,000.
Yep.
Doesn't mean, and I specifically say it's for this cause, they can't use it for putting it in the general fund, because I stipulated that's where it's going.
So if a business gives us $5,000 for Illuminate Isani, and I have to give it to you because you're gonna manage the money for us this year, I can say it's going for Illuminate Isani.
Correct, you could, and the city has to accept all donations by resolution, and it will, usually, it defines whether it's for Illuminate, or if
Yep,
it's for
or
a
whatever.
bench, or it's
Sure.
for a memorial, you know,
Sure.
different things, but
Okay.
yes.
That's
Well, then-
workable, I think.
Would they not have to at least break down their MOC and what they're going to do with it, so we can agree where those funds are going? I mean, like, let's just say you get 20,000, so could you break it down to, we'll buy 10,000 worth of more lights, we'll put 5,000 into this, and we'll use 5,000 towards wages, or whatever? Could you kind of,
Carla Andrela, 312 Flintwood Street,
you.
Southwest. So yes, we would be able to do that because we want to keep accurate records of where everything's going, how many hours are being used, all of those things, so that it can be a successful event throughout whoever is running it, whether it's, you know, a president or a vice president, it's passed on and things like that. As our board grows and continues to move forward, we would, you know where those funds are going. So we would be able to provide that, but part of the reason why we had wanted to start a 501c3, yes, I'm really bad at that. One of the reasons why we wanted to start that, have that ability to do that is because there's a lot of grants that you can apply for, but you can't apply for them unless you're a nonprofit. So having that nonprofit status would greatly expand the amount of funds that we would be able to secure in the future. We just weren't sure if we would be able to obtain that prior to the start of Illuminate Isani this year. It's possible we could, but we just weren't sure. But it sounds like legal is saying that they would rather not have the city be doing that, that we would have to try to find somebody else to hold the funds for us.
so,
And we would be open to doing that too, that's fine. Did I answer
so
your
at that
question?
point, then us as council wouldn't even have any right to ask them to put out what they want to spend, percentage on this much, percentage on that much. They could just use the 20,000 for whatever they want.
But our goal has always been not to have this be, especially this year, to be like this. We want to work with the city. We want it to be a collaboration. We don't want it to be just, we wanted to work as a city, with the city to put this event on. We didn't want it to necessarily just be our thing. We would be open to taking it over. In past years, we just don't know enough about it right now. So our goal is to just continue this event because I think it's a great event for the city, but take off as much burden financially and just the plain burden, time and all those things from the city as possible. And we were willing to take on any of that kind of stuff just with volunteer hours.
What you have to realize too, 501(c)(3)s, they are more scrutinized than the city is.
I know they are, but they're really expensive to put together, and I mean, unless they want to use that 20,000 they make this year, if they make that much, to be able to go towards forming a nonprofit.
We have done some research and it looks like it can cost anywhere from as little as $400 to like $1,100. Just,
Okay,
we have looked into it.
Good job. I like the shirts too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you guys
they're
are doing a
nice.
great job. I'm going to continue on with some of these, if you guys don't mind, so we can maybe get through. These are mostly just like word and verbiage changes, nothing super specific, but if you look at page 3, bullet point number 2, it says, Isanti Together will receive all the leftover giveaways from the previous years for use in 2025 and beyond, and I just thought we should add for Illuminate Isanti to the end of that, so it's used for Illuminate Isanti. And then on the next section, setup for event, setup starting with Public Works as early as October 1st, but no later than October 10th. Josie, do you know, does October 1st to the 10th usually work well for Public Works? I know there's generally not snow at that point, but are they doing any other, very tedious things at that time that schedule wouldn't work?
I would like to say that it will work, but I do think that when we had set up before, we had a little bit more of a grace period, so 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
Because you never know what's going to happen, depending on staff availability, but also just larger emergency type things that could come up. 10 days is pretty tight. And I'm not sure if this plan includes putting up fence in that, or is the fence going up at all?
Oh, we weren't talking about doing any sort
Okay.
of fencing.
So I
Good call.
think it depends on the scope of how much time is required, like what exactly, I'm not sure myself how many displays need to be put up in a 10-day period.
Okay. All right, that leads into my next question. The next bullet point, it says, Public Works will set up displays and requested items before the first weekend of the large group volunteer setup. I would like to put an hour limit on this. I don't know if it's 100 hours, 200 hours, 300. I don't know what the hour limit would be, but just so we have a quantifiable idea, so we can say, yes, you guys are going to have 200 hours, and they will help you all that 200 hours get as much as they can out, and then it's done. I don't know if that's a reasonable thing or if you guys have any idea on that. Obviously, the 700 or 600, even 500 hours is too much for the city to take on, but I think if we could put like a time limit on it, I think that would maybe alleviate the question for the former question with the 10 days for Public Works help. I didn't know if you guys had a number in mind on that or what your thoughts were. Obviously, as much as you can get.
It's not even as much as we can get, just to know that we don't know how to set up those displays at all. So we just want those set up, and we are willing to have volunteers there to help the
Yep.
public workers and we want to be able to learn, like, we're okay with learning how to do that and knowing how to do it and assisting and potentially even taking it over if that's a possibility in the
Okay.
future. We don't really know.
And just so I'm clear, are these
Right.
just the large displays only?
It was specified earlier in this as well. Yep.
Because I think then, I can have Public Works tell me tell us exactly how many hours it would take them, given which exact displays it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we also don't know, like, maybe we listed a display that Public Works would think that, oh, they would be able to do that, it would be very easy. We just put anything that we deemed a large display, because we didn't really know.
Okay. So that's a little bit malleable, and would you guys be opposed to if we were to get a number, put the number in here, just so then we have like it's not ambiguous, we have like a number. I think it's easier to.
Yeah, well, and I do think that we have a booklet, so to say, of all the displays in the Park and Rec Department. And what would be very helpful and clear cut for me and Public Works would be to star all the displays you're talking about.
Sure.
So we would know exactly which one. So there was no ambiguity of,
Yeah.
did they mean this snowman or that snowman kind of thing.
Sure.
I also think will be clear to explain like that they're gonna go in those locations that have already been created for them too. Like, I think that should be outlined in here because specifically the snowman and the tree have foundations in the ground for them. It'd be much more time consuming for us to move them to different
yeah.
locations in the
Oh,
park.
no.
And
We're
not that
okay.
I think you would do that, but I just still
Totally okay
think
with
that
that.
it would, make sense to just have that outlined clearly.
And one more thing to add is that 10-day period, does that include your volunteers putting together any repairs? That's just after the repairs were made on anything? Because every year they pull them out, there's repairs that they're doing, so I just wanted to be clear on that too.
Oh, yeah, we were just, I mean, if a 10-day grace period is not long enough, we're okay with extending or working with that, and we know weather and things happen and all that stuff. We're reasonable people, but we're just trying to come up with something, some sort of an outline. But yes, we will definitely
I would
do
think-
any sort of repairs or anything that we have to. We
I would
actually-
suggest the whole month of October as that time frame. Generally, the weather, getting the end of October could turn nasty, but generally it's that second week in November that we start getting, the snow or whatever and whatnot. But I mean, you can't judge that in the last couple of winters we've had, so. But I would say the whole month of October would give everybody ample enough time to get together. I'm sure they could coordinate, major, God forbid if a water main breaks or something, and that's gonna come first priority in Public Works, is stuff like that, so.
Absolutely.
I think if you're gonna have to put a time frame on it, I'd have to say it's the whole month of October.
I would agree, as someone who's helped guide the timeline previously, I would think the whole month would be also still allow you to be able to set up around those items.
Sure,
Just-
absolutely.
So I don't think it would inhibit the rest of the, process from happening. So just,
And we were also hoping to maybe be able to access some of the stuff at least, even like this summer. We could start going through cords and seeing if lights are working and be proactive instead of reactive as much as possible. We don't know if that's a big ask or not, but we're willing to.
There's a
start
guy
doing
sitting
that.
behind
Yeah,
you
I
that would
know.
have all that information for you.
I know. Like I said, I don't know if that's a big ask or not, but we're willing to be able to do that stuff.
Unfortunately, that's a big ask even for us, our Public Works Department, to get in there, just because we have to have a staff person from the PD sit there with the stuff because it's an
Okay.
evidentiary facility.
Okay.
So
Hang
it's
on.
Travis, yeah, Travis, go ahead.
And just, Public Works is there to discuss that, but that stuff was put in there like a Jenga puzzle. So,
Really good
my
at
guess
Jenga.
is, once it's coming out, it's gonna come out. It's put,
All right.
it's a good Jenga puzzle.
Okay.
Tight, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But that gives you the whole month of October too.
True.
Because they would have to bring the stuff all out. They're not gonna bring this week and this that week. If they're gonna spend the time, they're gonna get it out
Sure.
as soon
Makes
as
sense.
possible.
If you ever find a place to store it by any chance, we would be all ears to that, and then you could work on it all year round.
Well, I do like that Connex idea.
Yeah. All right, if we can continue on, if that's okay. Page 4, under the second bullet point, the last sentence, it says, "Isanti together will not be fiscally responsible for any city workers' hours." I'd like to add, say if we put a 200-hour, max on it, up to 200 hours, and then after that, we would have to charge, just because I don't see you guys wanting to go over and pay, but at the same point, it's just something that I think in a contract you generally have.
Sure.
And then during the event, Isanti Together reserves the right to make any changes to eliminate Isanti to make the event successful. That's a little broad, and I'm not sure. I feel like somebody might be able to run away with that and turn the event into something it wasn't intended, potentially. Just playing devil's advocate, I don't know if we can add some sort of language to it, to have some city oversight. If something far out there, it becomes something that's not even Illuminate Isanti intentions, if that's something the city can interact with, or, if it's evaluated every year, or whatever, however that works. And then page 5, let's see. Under tear down of event, bullet point 3, it says, "Have 6 to 8 days of large group volunteer tear down spread over 2 to 3 weekends dates, which will be determined by weather." I would suggest that you may not want to limit yourself to weekends. Ideally, in a perfect world, yes, but I think with winter, I know our public works staff has problems with it. When you get snow, it really slows you down. So maybe having that just 2 to 3 weeks or whatever might help you guys out. I don't want you to handcuff yourselves by having something that's too restrictive for y'all.
Well,
Yeah,
and-
if you
and
want-
one thing that we've also had is if there's any kind of rain and they freeze down, it's in the best interest of the displays to leave them until they thaw a bit. Otherwise, just more damage occurs.
Makes sense.
And then another question, can Public Works remove all the big displays with the small displays in place? Because right now, it sounds like Public Works, we need to take down the big stuff first. And I'm worried, like, say if you guys fall behind on the small stuff, that the big stuff Public Works might not be able to get to. So I'm not sure if geographically, the way that's laid out, can you get out the big stuff generally with the small stuff still there?
For the most part, the tree, it would just have to be the snowflakes that surround it usually, or the crescents that go around it. That's pretty minimal moving of stuff. So yes, the way it was laid out last year, yes.
Okay, that's just something to keep in mind. If you guys get behind, you don't want Public Works to be handcuffed.
Sure.
Um,
Absolutely.
And then on page 6, bullet points 3 and 5, it was struck out or proposed to be struck out by city staff earlier in the assembly, so I would assume we would want it struck out for the tear down, because if Public Works isn't gonna be putting up the lights on the trees or the light poles decorations, then I assume we're not gonna have to take them down, so those could be struck on there, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And then the last bullet point on page 6, I send you together will be provided with a list of contracts for public works, electrical services, et cetera, for repairs during the event. If a display malfunctions during the event, it will remain off for the rest of the night and be repaired and the following day. Should a display malfunction before city staff conclude their shift and someone is available to fix it, they will do so. If infrastructure repairs are required, the city will make a concerted effort to resolve the issue promptly. I would just like to specify that this public works repair is only for large displays, because it doesn't say that in there, and I know that was,
sure.
yep, so just specify that. There's a couple more, I don't know if,
Sorry, I just want to go back to your last point and to address the light poles. It was discussed with Public Works and myself that we'd prefer to be the ones to put those snowflakes and lights on the light poles,
Okay.
just since it's our infrastructure.
so we need to
Wanted
add that,
keep- Yep, they're still on here. Those aren't stricken.
okay,
So it was just the light bulbs, but the trees have been struck in?
Yes,
struck.
yep. We just don't have the time or manpower this year.
okay,
That's totally fine. We've already come up with option B.
sounds good. It was struck in the copy that we had, so, okay.
So on that one that you had just shared, though, about
Yeah.
the bullet with, I stand together will be provided with a list of contacts for Public Works, electrical service, et cetera. So if this is remaining a city event and we have volunteers, city staff would need to coordinate if we are doing the repairs. If there, we can share contacts of who we've used, but then it has to be very, I mean, I guess what I'm getting at, sorry, is that we cannot have a volunteer group initiate repairs that the city would be responsible or liable for. There has to be a clear separation. And so if Public Works is gonna be going out there to do the repairs for the large events, okay, that's one thing. I mean, it would just have to be very defined.
So that would
of
be-
who's- And then if this did become a 501c3, or you had a fiscal host, nonprofit group, then it would have to be completely separate. That it would be the event organizer repairing the event for them. It can't cross the lines with the city.
Okay, so that would be a verbiage thing with you and the attorney, I assume, getting, okay. Does that make sense?
Especially since there's a clear line between, we'd want to make sure there's a clear line between the event items and our infrastructure, because we do have fuses blow sometimes, and so then I'm sure we'd want more.
Right, and that's kind of what we were, that's what we were more along the lines of, what we were trying to say, like, that, like, and then, you know, the larger displays, since you guys were gonna be putting them up. And then we would be using like the sound system in the cities, I don't even know what you use to like make it operate. So we were just thinking like that's the city's stuff, but like the small displays and the little strands of lights, like we would definitely take care of that. That's what we were saying, or what we were trying to say anyways.
Sure. Yeah, we can define that. And then if Public Works, I'm assuming, would not be on staff, we've always had someone or park staff present. We would not be present, correct?
No, just to turn the lights, or and if they're on a timer.
So just so we would have it written, just so everyone was aware that if Public Works got called in to repair one of the big tree or something like that, we would have callback hours for overtime, just so.
We would have had that if it was our event anyways.
No, we've typically had seasonals or park staff
okay.
present
Got it.
all the time.
Got it. So should we restrict that to amount of time as well, or include that in the amount of time? Okay. Okay, little things that could be ironed out, yep.
Absolutely.
And then the second to last bullet point on the last page, request the city to host a residential business light display event or contest. I would like to see the city not involved in that because our staff time, as was mentioned by Josie Wood, is very tight right now. And I'm a little concerned that, having a light display contest is gonna soak up some hours. Now, I don't know, we could do that, we could incorporate it into the 200 hours or whatever we decide, but I think that would be a great thing for you guys to do, but we could facilitate it by using City Hall or, something of that sort, but I think if you guys lead that so that, the City Hall is just here for support on it, I think that would be preferred by myself and I'm assuming the rest, but we can talk about that. What do you guys think about that?
And that's something that could be shelved too. I mean, it just
Okay.
it was just a thought that it is called Illuminate Isanti, and it would be nice that if it was, instead of just at the park, it would be throughout the city, is all we were thinking.
Sure.
It's no different than voting on a parade, on a parade float. It's no different than doing that.
Oh, yeah, I think it's a great idea. I just don't
And
want
it's
city
no
staff
different
to.
is, generally the mayor votes on the best parade float. It's no different than that,
Okay.
in my opinion. It's not like that's not like you gotta go out every single day and do it. You just go out and you look at the lights and you decide which one you prefer. That's all that it's gonna end up coming down to.
Or they enter their house, and then we just have X amount of addresses to go to, or are you saying we pick at
Well-
random, and whether they apply to be in the contest or not?
You'd have to register, and you just
Right.
get in a car and drive around and go see it.
Sure.
And it could always be something that we do next year, that's an expansion from what we're doing this year.
What was the prize money we've had in prior years?
Yeah, I think it
I
was like
believe we didn't have
$100.
prize money. I think we'd had giveaways and activities. Like there was some gingerbreads, there was ornaments, like those kind of things for
Sure.
prizes, I guess you could say, but they're more like
Giveaways. Yeah.
giveaways.
I'd like to see at least 500 myself. If we're gonna do it, I mean, if we're putting on a light park, we might as well try to get the city lit up as much as possible. It might be an incentive to do that. Try it 1 year. I mean, we're saving money from not putting an axe to this in the first place. I mean, we're not saving money. We're still
Right.
gonna be
Spending
spending
less
money,
money.
but we're spending a lot less, exactly.
If I could add in about the advertising, the Facebook thing. So just to be clear, how I understand it is that the city council is looking at that this event this year would be still a city event and we have volunteer group assisting. And that's how that would be drafted. And if they end up becoming a 501c3 or they went with a host nonprofit group, that'd be a completely different agreement. They're really pretty different for what's able to happen. I think that if you want the event to be successful, and it will be a city event, even with this group running it, have them volunteer to make your graphics, but it is a city event, so I think that the time for staff to make things is the problem, not to post it on Facebook. Now, if they became an organization, 501c3 next year, then no, we would not be sharing their event on our city Facebook page, because we just don't do that. We have a policy not to do that, because otherwise we'd have to do it for everyone and be fair. So, but this year, what I'm hearing is that maybe we're leaning towards, we're allowing this organization to volunteer to the city, and we'd accept that. We have agreement, so everyone understands who does what, but it will be a city event this year, is what I'm hearing.
That works for me. I got a quick question. So this new website that we're building, can we have a page dedicated to events, outside events, for like the rodeo, street rods, any outdoor events we have throughout the summer and the wintertime that we can dedicate a page on our city website towards events? I mean, it's to the city's best interest to advertise events to bring people in.
I would say, obviously, we can do whatever you guys want to direct us to do. Our best way of doing that without having staff looking for and setting that onus on us to being in charge of putting out the events, do it like we do our business registration page and have people sign up to share their event on our page and do it that way. But it does become time consuming, just even with the business page, so
Well,
just an effort.
I'm not talking about business events that,
So maybe just special event permit type things, you mean?
exactly.
Like
all
they
special
supply
event
an
permits,
advertisement?
Exactly what I was talking about. Anything outdoor, that's why I kind of led it to that.
The one thing we would just have to be aware of, we'd have to have a policy, and we have a policy not to do that, so we'd have to look at the policy for the language to include that. You could maybe define it as who applies for a special event permit. You could maybe define it as nonprofit groups, but we won't be able to pick and choose. So for example,
Right.
if a business had an event, grand opening, open house, and we did not agree with what they were selling, doing, promoting, we would not be able to say, well, we're not going to showcase that event. We can't show any kind of bias. If we allow one, we allow it all, kind of
So
thing. Becomes
you-
illegal.
So you're saying we couldn't just say anybody who applies for a special event permit? We would be excluding people who opened up a new business if they considered that a special event, is what you're saying? It could be considered,
It is possible that we could define it just for special event permits, but I will say that that's probably not the majority of events happening in our community. So there's some, it will hit some of the events, but, I mean, I just think that there's a lot of events happening that don't apply because it's within their confines and they don't need to have a special event permit.
Could we add
Right.
that to the next cow agenda so we can get moving
Yeah,
with
I-
this conversation and discuss that more at length at some point?
yeah, I'd like to see that discussed more because there's really no outlet out there that shows our community what's going on a weekly or daily basis and their opportunities to go out and support a local business within our community. And I would like to see if the city can't do it, if we can figure out another way to do it.
The chamber does a fair bit
Yeah,
of that
they
as well,
do.
yeah.
They do.
George, I would agree with you because I know that I have personally on my own Facebook page with my business, I have posted events from that the city is hosting, and I've had people find that information only on my Facebook page, which isn't even the city's. So I think people are finding it very difficult to find information on events that are happening in the city.
I think you're right.
I agree 100%.
I do too. Okay.
So if we could add that to a cow agenda item, we can discuss that further later. One last thing that I had on there, I know we had kind of talked about, you guys having your meetings at the community center or here or whatever, but I don't know if we can get away with doing a no-cost rental because I don't think that's fair because even nonprofits have to pay over there. But maybe if we can or whatever, maybe we only allow during the week when it's not like heavily rented. Like right now, the weekends they're always booked out months and months in advance. So I don't know if we could do just during the week or if we could just charge you guys a nonprofit cost for the rental space or you use this facility here during business hours or whatever. I would just like to have that maybe a little ironed out. But that's another finer detail.
Yeah, and if that's a big ask that we didn't realize it was a big ask, we're completely okay with finding other places to meet. That's fine.
Okay.
I would like to see Public Works, if we have another winter that was snowless during this event, and they're out there and they get a good base on that sledding hill, if they can turn them things around and hit Illuminate Isani, because it's a winter event and it'd be really nice to have snow in there. I mean, if we're spending the time, I don't think they're gonna have a lot of hours turning that thing around and trying to at least get a portion of it, if maybe not all of it, because that's a huge area, but if they could get like the main area, I don't know, it's something I think we should think about too.
Josie, do you have something to add to
I
that?
know. I'm sure she does.
She had a look on her face.
No, I'm just listening. So what I'm hearing you say is that you'd like to move the snowmakers over into Illuminate?
Well, they're so close. I mean, if they get a good base on a sledding hill and there's still a lot of good snowmaking nights, if they could just turn them around, maybe move them another 100 feet and see how much of that Illuminate Sandy they can hit. I'm not saying to bring it inside to it, but, see what they can hit, get a little snow in there.
It may be possible. I mean, we have the hoses that we got to drag over from the hydrants and such. I'm not going to say we can't. We might be able to.
We just did.
I think we like all the snow we can get on
And
that
I'm
hill.
only saying on a completely snowless winter like we had 2 years ago, there was no snow in there. I mean, it would have been nice to have snow if we would have had the opportunity
Just
to
to
do
let you
it,
know
but,
too, we have some plans for the use of that amphitheater,
sure.
so, which is the area right at the bottom of that hill, so that might tie in with that, to put snow
Okay.
there.
And we had
I mean,
discussed.
odds are
sorry,
like probably 1 in 15 that happens, that we have 0 snow in December like we did a few years ago,
And-
but.
I just want to be clear that when we took out the snow liable for making snow, wasn't because we don't want to help, it's just because we can't be liable for bringing in
Right.
snow. We have a hard enough time finding snow for the sledding hill right now and making that work, and there's a lot of things to snowmaking and certain kinds of snow with kids playing on it that we have to consider also in our parks, so it's just that. So,
Okay.
just,
Throwing it out there.
All right, any other questions? This will be a fluid type deal, but I think you got a really good base, and I appreciate you guys putting in the work.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for it. From the start, I've liked the event, I just haven't liked the taxpayer burden, so the fact that communities get involved and splitting the cost, I think makes it a lot more, you know. Awesome.
I want to say one
This is
thing
great.
to all you guys. ISANI together, when this first was brainchild for you all taking it over, you had no conception that it was going to happen this year.
Correct.
And I have to say, you all banded together and drove this thing to where it's at right now. And I commend you 100% for that. I see your commitment. I personally, in my opinion, I think we can hash out some of these smaller details. As far as I'm concerned, if it was up to me right now, I'd say run with it, and let's go, let's get going, let's make it happen. But I'm one of 5 up here, so I have to commend you all on the effort that you put into this, because when this first was talked about, you didn't think it was gonna happen this year, this soon.
Correct.
So I commend you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking at it as you're the dream team, because we really wanted to put this together and really have a volunteer aspect to it, because it was just draining us year after year. And if we could find a way to get the community involved and make it work where it isn't such a drain, like we're just throwing an event and maybe I can look at this right now and know we're gonna have at least 25 to 40,000 a year and do it if we maintain it in this direction, between staff time and public works time and other line items I can see here. So, no, I'm glad we can get this into a reasonable aspect, and I'm really glad you guys stepped forward and are helping out and doing this. And I hope you can get to that 40 volunteers you were talking about. That'd be awesome, because you'll be able to make really quick work of everything.
So I guess we were kind of expecting that tonight we would hear if this is a go, like we can actually tell people in the community that, yes, I think we have a lot of people that are willing to donate time and money, but they're waiting to kind of hear if it's a go. Like, it's going to take place or it's not going to take place. So I think that's what we were kind of hoping we were going to hear tonight.
Sure. Josie, as far as, adjusting language to however you and the lawyers see fit or whatever, how long do you think something like that would take? Can we tell them this is something that might happen this year, or what's the timeline on that? I know you guys are stacked, so.
I think that, I'd like to be optimistic and say we could do it for the next council meeting, but I frankly think that that's unrealistic.
Okay.
By the time we get everybody, we have to sit down with Public Works and get all their thoughts involved with this, the attorneys. It does take some time to make sure we bring all the parties to the table. And I would encourage us to have, with Stephanie and the group, to have a meeting so no one is caught off guard of what's discussed here, because that back and forth, I think, will be key after we get some of those legal logistics ironed out.
Sure.
So I think, though, that confidently we could plan to have it on the June 3rd city council meeting as a draft agreement between, and again, this would be drafted as it's a city event and the organization is volunteering to the city to work together to make it happen.
Would you like us to have a vote whether we would like to go ahead with all that process? So maybe that'll give them the answer that they need? Or what would you recommend we do tonight on that? Will you guys need a vote for us to
I
go
don't-
forward?
No, we don't need a
Okay.
vote for us to move forward doing the work. I guess I'm hesitant to give them any kind of direction, because what if they don't like what the city is saying? This is how it has to be written, this is how it has to be done, and they're like, well, we we don't know if we can get it done that way. I don't know if you would, maybe you wouldn't, but you know what I mean? I think it's a little premature to say that, to put
Okay.
that on them, and then they go out in the public, and then we all sit down at the table, and they're like, oh, man, we didn't know it was gonna be written this way. Because there will have to be some certain language things included, you know, parameters put in there. But we will begin working on it right away and get all the parties with staff and the attorney and everyone going on drafting something, and then bring everyone to the table.
Right, and the
It's
specifics
cost.
and the legal language, the
Yeah.
cost to the city, like, just so we have,
Liability.
right, that's the plan, I think. I would say, I
I
mean,
guess you could ask these other
Yeah.
four gentlemen up here if they feel that this is a viable, and that would give, I mean, we're not taking any votes on saying yay or nay,
Right.
but you could get their opinions if they feel this is viable.
I'm 100% yes.
I'm 100% yes.
There is one thing I wanted to clarify, since they're gonna work out the kinks. Twice it's stated, Isanti Together will not be fiscally responsible for any city worker hours. Right now, the accounts are separate. Once they have full funds, if volunteers fall through, does the event get canceled if there's not volunteers showing up to make up the difference between what Public Works is doing and what's expected? Or is Public Works expected to do it all on the city's behest and not get reimbursed for that, or how does that work out?
Yeah, that's a fair question.
Assign an hourly type, yep. Yep. Right, that's kind of what I was thinking with if we lay out the hours, and then anything over that is, say, $50 an hour, or whatever it is.
But then we should specify at what point all the stuff needs to be completed by before Public Works steps in and makes it in the gap.
Okay, sure.
Quick question, Josie. Can an escrow account be set up, like half of the money be put in escrow and it gets put back to them if they fulfill the obligations of everything they said they were gonna do?
I'm gonna say no. I don't believe so, because any funds that came in, even if the group of the volunteers bring the funds in, it becomes city funds.
Right.
So we do have a special fund for Illuminate. Whether we use that or create something different, so we can obviously not, what I don't think it was discussed, but we're not gonna use any funds they bring in to offset our debt on the event, right? So we're kind of starting a little bit over on a zero balance, so to say. I think everyone's thinking that. But we would not be able to give any of those funds over. So we'll do this year this way, and then it needs to be reevaluated how it's gonna be done next year. But even if there was a surplus of funds, we wouldn't be able to turn that over to the group. Just like we wouldn't also be able to, and this will get a little bit hairy too, is who's buying the items. So they may wanna go on Amazon and buy these lights and then use the city's money. We actually have to have the city, so that'll take staff, that'll have to order those, so that coordination back and forth. We can't give a check or funds to the group because they're just volunteers working for the city this year.
So if we put them in.
And then that would go in
the
those
illum-
hours,
Oh,
those city hours.
Sure, we can have a staff
Yeah, I'm
hours for
just saying,
Park and
like,
Rec and
that's-
then staff or hours for Public Works.
okay. But any money, let's say they do put money in to the city funds, and it goes in the Illuminate Isani budget item. If they did form a nonprofit in the future, we could relinquish that whole account to them.
No,
No.
it's public funds. Once we accept it as a donation, it becomes public funds. Yeah, but I believe if we close out, and I can get verification on this, but I believe if we close out a fund, it'll get reabsorbed, but it doesn't get passed on to any organization.
Something to consider.
So would it be fair that at the end of the event, and if there's $5,000 left in that account, to look at what we might need for next year and have you order it right then and there, and then that,
Yeah,
I think that's possible.
yeah.
just like a little foresight for the next season?
That's exactly what I was gonna suggest.
I would also tell you to maybe start working on your 501(c)(3). I don't know how long that takes, but I do know that is probably one of the most stringent things that they watch. I know at the Sportsman's Club, they have charitable gambling, that's the 501(c). And they had to build a building just specific for the gambling, and nobody can go in there unless you're an officer of the gambling for the Sportsman Club. So I know that, they have to keep everything and, so I know they're very stringent, and they come out and they go through everything with a fine-tooth comb, big time.
You guys chose a great name, so if for whatever reason this doesn't work, you're still Isanti Together, and you could do other things too. So even if you start a nonprofit, you can still, you didn't handcuff yourself, so that was a smart name choice.
That's what we wanted, that's why we did it
Yeah,
that way.
good, good.
Right. So,
Any other input? Nick, go ahead.
I wasn't sure if any of you were familiar with the chamber, but every month they have a meeting and people are always mentioning nonprofits and events. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with, but that would be worth looking into as far as marketing and soliciting donations at.
And the city does generally make an announcement at that. I mean, regularly, it was myself or Stephanie for a while making people know, aware that Illuminate Isanti is here, and we're looking for donations and to come to the event. Like last year, people were excited to hear it was free, obviously, and more businesses were interested then, and I think that's a great opportunity. Thanks for bringing that up, Nick. If there's no other conversation or questions, I think we're good to go on this item, and I think you guys have a little bit of direction, hopefully enough.
Yeah,
But I
thank you.
think it'll work out well, so.
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys' time. All right, item K4, resolution to consider a special event permit for Arts and Science Academy Field Day event.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is for the Arts and Science Academy for their Field Day event, which will take place on May 29th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. for a one-day private event. It will take place in their cul-de-sac on 6th Avenue Court Northeast, with field day activities and games at the Academy Park as well. There will be a Ninja Anywhere truck attending the event, and the truck will set up in the cul-de-sac on 6th Avenue Northeast. And the Arts and Science Academy will put up 2 blockades and additional cones as needed to block off the cul-de-sac area, as requested by Chief Myers. And there's a map in the packet for the details. Parking will be at the elementary and middle school parking lots, and students and staff, along with parent volunteers, will help ensure there is no trash left behind. They also notified the neighbors about the event and will not be blocking any of their access to their parking lots. There's an estimate of 376 to 382, very precise number of people in attendance.
this is not the first time they've done that,
No.
correct? Okay. I make a motion to approve it. They've always done it, and I don't think we've ever had any issues with them, so.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Lundin, second by Councilmember Heeman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Sounds like a fun event. I hope it goes well. K5, resolution to consider awarding the bid for the Sandy Hills Rehabilitation Project. Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So we received bids on April 29th. We received 7 bids. That was a nice bump from our usual 2 to 3 when we have the mixed mill and overlay and seal coat projects, so that was good to see. The low bid, North Valley, came in about 19% under our estimate, which holds pretty consistent with what we were kind of expecting after our mill and overlay project came in about the same. So with that said, that would put the assessments that we had in that report all generally 19% lower. So that average from the report, that was an average assessment of $2,064, would now be about $1,667. So that knocks about $400 off the average assessment. So that's that base bid. And then as we talked, am I like crazy loud when I'm in this thing?
No, I think it's
No,
good.
you're fine.
So we also bid out those alternates for the sidewalk, and then the 2 different ways to address the trail. And so what you see before you is the grid of all the different numbers, and I have the kind of different subtotals depending on which ones you put together. But I guess it's open for you guys to elect which alternates you want to add on to that base bid. North Valley is the low bid on all different combinations, so it doesn't sway who gets the bid. It's just what you guys want to elect to proceed with. I guess at this point we could talk about that. And then the only other piece that I wanted to bring up is that rain garden. The estimated cost of that rain garden was about $3,250, and the low bid from North Valley is $6,714. And so just one other piece to consider that, you know, we talked it through. Basically, it was already decided that it would be laid out to the resident as their cost with the rain garden program incentive, you know, match that exists. And I guess the only other item I just want to talk about was whether it's even worth talking to the residents on those two, when that price is already so significantly higher than we were hoping. So I guess at that point, I guess if you have any questions or we want to go over which alternates you prefer, then we'd recommend awarding that base bid with selected alternates to North Valley to move forward.
I would just like to say on the rain gardens, I think we should just put closure on it for those people that were interested and let them know the price and let them decide. Let them know that, you know, the bid came at $6,500, we have a $500 incentive that the city will cover if they want to do it, just so they don't feel like the city left them hanging high and dry. And if they want to flip that on their own dime, then we put in the curb cut for them and then they'll be happy. So that's my recommendation on that. I don't know if you guys feel differently on the rain garden aspect.
Oh, agree.
I agree.
Okay?
And then I did have a question. Have you worked with North Valley Incorporated yourself in the past? Do you have any experience with them?
Oh, yeah, plenty.
Okay.
Yeah, they're good.
Okay. I'm happy to see 19% lower than we expected. That means, you know, $400 savings per house on average. That's another big deal. So that's a great thing to see. What did you guys think on the trail overlay or realignment option?
Jason, could you clarify the difference between alternate 1 and 3?
Sure, so alternate 1 is the concrete sidewalk for that half a block of Birch. Alternate 2 is unrelated, the bituminous trail that's got the curves to be straightened out and fully built. And then alternate 3 is not straightening out the bituminous trail and just overlaying it how it currently is aligned. Based on the numbers, you know, just to kind of just generalize the grand total, if you chose the sidewalk and the trail realignment added to the low bid, the total that comes out to $768,000 and change is still 40 grand less than we just estimated the base bid at.
Could you give me a life expectancy of 1, 2, and 3?
Sure, so 1, the sidewalk, concrete, we usually try and expect it to last the full duration of the entire road system. So there's probably gonna be maintenance at about the 30-year mark, and whether or not we're doing a full reconstruction on a street again, or our maintenance program, you know, maybe is doing some spot repairs into that, you know, 30 to 50-year window before you're, you know, really messing with a concrete sidewalk. Okay. Bituminous trail overlay is usually more on that 10 to 15 years. Totally unrelated type of a thing, but bituminous, when the trails already kind of have the few root heaves, you know, a few just open cracks, and if we try and just overlay that, that's gonna reflect through pretty quick. It won't look that great after even 5 years. It'll be better than it currently is, but after 5 years, you'll already see all the cracks. After 10 years, it'll start looking like it did. And then we'll be talking in 15 years about the trail's not looking so good. The reconstructing it, you know, would be at least the 15 years before we're even having to talk about going into our maintenance program, you know, or the 10 years at least of we should fog seal this, you know, like we're doing with the rest of our trails. And then we try and do that surface maintenance to extend that life out to not having to rebuild the entire trail section like this for, you know, 30 years or so. You know, and the other reason that it originally came up was Public Works was wanting to straighten out that trail for maintenance purposes, just for plowing and all the things that go along with it, and then this sod restoration and things that they've had to do as their plows can't follow that zigzag in the winter. So that's how it came to be, why it's in there, and that's where our costs came out.
Josie, did we get an estimate on how much time Public Works on average spends seeding that? I went and walked it today and there was no damaged grass areas. So either they plow it really well or there wasn't enough snow last year to dig up much, but I didn't see much previous damage to any of it. Did you get an estimate?
Sorry, I did not ask
Okay.
them.
Okay. I know you guys are swamped over there at Public Works, so. I went and walked it today, like I said, I personally like it with the zigzags, I think it's kind of cool. And even if you look at the cost, it's triple the cost to do the realignment, even if, say, the trail overlay lasts 15 years and the trail realignment might last 30, you're still $20,000 ahead on per year expense if you do alternate 3.
That's why I wanted to do a little math on it. It's about
Well,
a wash.
And those are like the base numbers, but even at the 30-year, you're probably not reconstructing the full section again, where this realignment, you have to dig out the whole section because you're moving it. If we're gonna come back to redo the pavement in like 30 years, it would literally be either reclaiming it or lifting off that bit and putting in a new layer on. So that cost to reconstruct it, it'd be a lot cheaper than realigning it, because you don't have to get into the excavating and the actual base section along with it.
Would it help the longevity of the overlay if we did a mill at the same time? I know it's gonna cost more, but is that, because you said it basically transfers existing damage to the new substrate over 5 years or whatever you said, is it possible to mill that up and overlay it on the same already worked down path?
So sure, that's just like we're doing on our roads,
Yep.
our mill and overlay project. You mill the surface off. In the end, half of that milling is to try and get the edges to match in better, which we will still have a problem if we don't mill it and we just overlay 1.5 inches. We'll have 1.5 inch lip on either side, so we'll have to do a little dress up. Whereas if you mill it, now you're lowered that surface to match in better, but now you've removed 1.5 inches of the thickness of the pavement that's out there, so you have a thinner existing section. Or once you're done, you've only restored the section to what it was for how thick the pavement is, whereas if you straight overlay, if you say there's 2.5 inches of bit out there on the trail, you throw 1.5 inch overlay on top, well, at least now you got 4 inches of bituminous now, and at least that'll have some structural, integrity to hopefully
Okay.
last longer.
Sure.
A little dress up at these root heaves and things, having to do like spot patches is probably gonna be needed, just because you can't overlay, just humps, will smooth that out, but, at this point, either option would be fine, milling it first and then overlaying it. Probably will end up with kind of the same life expectancy, and admittedly, it would kind of match into the side, the grass on either side a little bit better, but
Let's go with the overlay.
I'd say go with the bid base price and then alternate 2 and be done with it. Because I think ultimately in that time frame, and then you gotta remember, 15 years, cost is going this way. Again, it's not gonna get any cheaper. And then it's gonna get straightened out, and then there's gonna be, we've done everything we can to minimize any damages.
I prefer alternate 3 myself with the bid price.
I agree with that.
George,
All right, yeah, let's go with it.
which one? You thinking?
Alternate 2?
Alternate 2?
Is that what you said?
I said alternate 3. Nick
That's
said
alternate
alternate 3.
That's
Steve
what I
said alternate
originally
2.
wanted.
Okay. All right, as far as the sidewalk for Birch, now on that one,
That was 519 and 523 Birch?
it was, I don't know where the
yeah, I
address,
believe those are the 2 addresses, yep.
Okay.
were those the 2 that were against it?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And I haven't heard, I went out and walked that neighborhood and I talked to a bunch of people and nobody was really super for the sidewalk. There were the 2 people that were opposed to it, mostly because of the loss of the driveway, which I totally get that. If you're losing 6 feet of your driveway, now you can't park 2 or 3 vehicles where you could before. I don't think that's right. And then if you look at like the layout of it, there's no actual intersections that people have to cross. So, I mean, even walking on the side of the road, I think is safe in that neighborhood. People have been doing it there for years. I don't think it's super highly traveled. So I don't see a huge need to do the sidewalk on that one, which kind of feels like sacrilege to say, but I don't think there's enough drive for it myself. Thoughts, Steve?
I already told you what I thought. I don't care about the sidewalk, because they already came in and said they didn't want it, so.
Okay.
I didn't even want to waste time bidding it, but we did, so.
So I'll make a motion to go with North Valley with alternate number 3.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Heeman, second by Councilmember Peterson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-1. Did we answer all your questions in that, Jason? Yes, sir. All right, great. Thank you for doing that, and I'm happy to see that the bids were responsible. Item K6, resolution to consider awarding the bid for well number 4 raw water main improvements.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So as we talked, we went out for bids with this water main new well point as 2 different bid parts, the actual drilling of the well, and then everything else. And so this is the everything else. This is the, get the site ready, a generator, the control panels, the driveway entrance to the well, and then directionally drilling the force main back to the treatment plant, and then doing the internal components inside the building to be able to meter it properly without that well house topic. And so, so this piece of the bid, we received 4 bids, with the low bidder being Pember Companies at $621,000 when our estimate was $846,000. So this half of the project came in about $225,000 under. I'm gonna loop this into the next item.
Right.
The well point, which we knew was very much more difficult to get a well driller, we gave it an extra year's worth of time. That number did come in higher, but when you put the 2 together, we're looking at, we're coming in under $122,000 under our estimate. So even though this one looks like it's I misspoke earlier, $225,000 under our estimate, the other one combining to it only gets us about $120,000 under our estimate. But as the combined project, we're looking pretty good. So we're just recommending awarding this specific bid to Pember Companies at the amount bid.
I have a couple of questions for you on that. Have you worked with Pember companies in the past?
My company certainly has. Brian, our environmental side does plenty. Mm-hmm.
Okay, how much oversight does the engineer have in that? Is there any potential for mistakes to be made with that project that could maybe come as a result of maybe a company not being the best at the job? Is everything tested for pit, everything's done like engineered wise, you guys check everything, and if there's something that's out of spec, it would get caught? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we'll have an inspector there. They'll submit all their materials for us to verify. They'll have to, I'm assuming they're bidding fusing their water main pipes and directionally drilling it, so we'd be monitoring that the fuses look right. They have to pressure test it when they're done. We'd be there when they're doing their bolting and fittings as we would any other water main type work. So yeah, I mean, that's, we're trying to be there to answer their questions and catch anything that they have problems with, but otherwise it is all tested, pressure tested, bacteria tested. Start up on the generator, making sure that all runs and is, wired properly, all that good stuff. That's what we're checking for.
Okay. I asked because if you look at the reviews of, usually we're just taking the lowest bid, but I want to be thorough on this. It's a big project. If you look at the reviews for the low bid, they have a 2.7 star rating, and the next bid has a 4.9 star rating for reviews. Now, I don't know if that plays any factor in this, but I want to make sure that our engineering company